Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancel. We review TV shows here, and the name of the show is Babylon 5.
Nice.
Yes,
The
yes.
year is 2020.
Season 1, Episode 6. It's called Mind War, so full spoilers for the episode, as always. And I'm Peter, of course, and I'm joined by Tara. See, I improvised a different intro, so I forgot to put in that vital piece of information, which, you know, so there you go. So it went almost smoothly. So this episode really brings the telepath stuff into the limelight. Is a very Talia and a guest star who's kind of related to her. Not related as in blood, just related to her story. Which would be weird because they were, as she puts it, lovers. That's how she phrases it. We're the lovers. But no, this episode has some kind of big ideas, some ballsy ideas, and I think the subplot ties into it kind of nicely, even though it's doing its own thing. But it does thematically have one shared idea.
hmm
Um, but again, we're building up some of the mistrust of the government forces on Earth, in particular the Psi Corps, and we're adding a bit of layers to Jakar. We're doing all these different things, and
Yeah,
uh, so
we get more evidence that Garibaldi is just a total perv.
uh, well, I actually like that scene a lot. It's a scene early on in the episode where Tyler is explaining to some guy who's going to do it, but he's actually the guy who's going to go make a deal with Catherine. But she's explaining, what it's like trying to ignore all the random thoughts that are going around. Oh, well,
Mhm.
regular thoughts are easy to ignore. They're just kind of like noise. I think the exact example she uses is that it's like you're in a hotel room and there's people being loud next door, and you kind of zone it out, but it's still always just kind of there in the background. Uh,
hmm
and the fact that Tara is literally sitting in a hotel room right now is just slightly
With
amusing.
people talking right through the walls, so distracting.
It's an undisclosed location, top secret. Yeah. So, but
I'm in Oregon.
she's you didn't have to tell them where you were.
I'll be gone by the time this goes up.
True, true. But
Back to my top secret location
in the state of California, that's just
of
as
home.
specific as you have to
Yes,
get.
which is huge.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh, anyway, so Tyler's explaining that sometimes though, like this was implied before back in like the first couple of episodes that a strong feeling, like emotion. It was the one with the she could feel the intent of murder from Londo. The idea that
Mm.
if someone's thinking something very intensely, that it'll cut through no matter what, and she'll sense it. And Garibaldi's just in the elevator they get into, and he's just sort of standing behind her. He just sort of like checks out her ass or something, and it just does a moment on her face where she's just like, I'm
He's
sensing
like
that.
smelling her hair.
And she elbows him in the stomach.
And then he claims to be in love.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's a little dated. Uh, like the way he's sort of like looking at her. It's a bit maybe more than it should be. But I don't think there's actually any harm intended in the scene itself. I think it's meant to
Hey,
come
I
across as
mean,
endearing.
you can't punish somebody for their thoughts.
No, you
They're
can't.
private. You punish
Exactly.
someone on their actions, or you
Yeah.
judge on their actions.
Yes. Precisely. Uh, so I mean, speaking as a man, Uh, if anyone could send some of the thoughts I've had at a random time at any given day, um, trust me, I would equally be in trouble
Mhm.
because it's thoughts.
It's just this character trait that
I know.
Garibaldi seems to have that the writers are saying he's the guy with the preferred thoughts.
Yes,
It's just
yes.
every week there's something.
Well, I think he's supposed to come across as kind of the most down to earth, kind of a lovable schlub, where he's a bit overweight. He likes cartoons. He's got pervy thoughts. He's like meant to be like the relatable dude
He's
compared to.
us. I get it.
Yeah. That's kind of who he is. Uh, so yeah, the main plot is this guy Jason Ironheart, I believe was the name.
That's a fake name.
Do you say the same thing about Michael Ironside?
No.
Well, that may be a stage name. I mean, would be that weird.
I don't want it to be. He's the
I
coolest
know,
name
I
in
know.
Hollywood.
You don't want it to be, but I think it might be. I don't know. I'll have to if I ever get to meet Michael
If this guy
Ironside.
was an Ironside, I would have been like, okay, I buy it. Maybe.
But
Like you have
Ironheart.
to earn that title, but at least it's a name I've heard of before. Ironheart. I don't know. He sounds like maybe one of your people, one of the Scottish.
Jason Ironheart and the Ironheart clan. Yeah. One of them. Okay. Uh, we haven't even got to the fact that Chekhov's in this episode, which you're going to, I'm sure, nerd out about in a second. Yeah. Yes. So Jason Ironheart is on the run from Psychor, and we don't really know why at first. Of course, we sort of learn as we go on, but he has what they call mind quakes, where he literally causes quakes. But we get so much mythology about the Psychor and the telepath world. In fact, he actually gives us a great comparison to sort of figure out just how common it is. He literally gives us a number. He says that 1 in 1,000 people from Earth will have some form of telepath ability, and even then, it ranges from like a level 1 to a level like 15 or something like that.
Mhm.
But 1 in 10,000 telepaths will also be telekinetic, which is a big thing. It just introduced. Oh wait, so there's extremely rare cases there's going to be telekinetic as well, telekinesis.
Yeah. So everybody who has the telepathic abilities has to go through a test to see if they are also telekinetic.
Yeah, they test everyone before they leave the academy, and Talia talks about having to try and move a coin, but it never would work. It was this thing. But he says that he's basically on the run because they were testing on him, trying to create the perfect, the next level telepath. That it's a bit of an arms race because if you've got the more powerful telepath, then you can read the enemy and you can get through their telepath's defenses because you're stronger.
Mhm.
So that's what they were trying to do to him. But they basically unlock something that's so powerful in him that he thinks that no one's ready to have it. Humans cannot have access to this. We're just not ready.
Yep.
Which is kind of legitimized by the end of the episode in that he literally ascends to be a higher being. Much like that of a Star Trek episode, whenever they encounter, like, it appears to be a god, but it's really just a really old species that have evolved into this godlike entity.
Right.
So
Evolved into cosmic dust. Sentient cosmic dust.
This is obviously, I mean, I've seen these early season 1 episodes before, so I remembered this. It was hard not to remember a lot of this episode because there's so many big things in it. But, I still think it's really ballsy, like how much it just does this thing at the end where he literally becomes this ethereal being in space and, like, talks to them and says, you'll see Commander Sinclair again in 10 million years, whatever that means.
Whatever that means, right? And I mean, I know the effects are kind of like, okay, you just have to accept.
Oh, sure.
I know they were great for the time before people come at me, but but they are super dated, And the effects on this one where it's like a person that's like translucent in space that's also talking, but like his lips aren't moving because they don't have that ability to make that effect. It's it's fun to watch. It's endearing that they tried.
I think it's super endearing. I'll agree with that word.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, Talia tries to convince Sinclair that he should be helped because everything they're doing is too much, and it raises this question that that Psycho and EarthGov are trying to basically create the ultimate telepath so they can control everything. They can control how people think. They can control the economy. They can control politics. All these things. This is, I mean, obviously not intentional because it's made in the past, but this, if we're comparing this to present day, this is the I guess the Russian collusion, like parallel.
It's dangerous to bring up.
I know, but you know what I mean. Like it's kind of like doing these things, and I thought all this mythology is super interesting on its own. The Talia and Talia having a personal history with this character is kind of like, I don't think it's super needed, although it did lead to a really interesting little bit of mythology about telepaths having sex, which, while I don't think it's needed in this episode, it was an interesting little tidbit.
It was very revealing.
Yeah.
Very personal.
This idea that, because she just sort of casually says to Sinclair, when two telepaths have sex, like, all of those mental boundaries break away and you essentially become one being, and it's the only time you don't really hear the other voices because you just, like, ascend together. It's this, like, out of body experience. Yeah. And Sinclair's just sort of sitting going, damn, regular sex is shit compared to this. This sounds great. um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. Maybe Garibaldi, poor bastard, can't live up to this. If Talia ever gives him the time of
Can't
day,
live up to a god who could share sexual experience of the mind together. Oof.
it's a lot to live up to. You can't deny
Yes.
that. Uh, no, but he does say though, as he ascends, he says that for Talia, because he's so close to her, that he'll give her a gift, and we get this flash of light kind of goes towards her, and like
Mhm.
Garibaldi kind of like, hey, do you think if I asked her, she'd tell me what it was? And Sinclair's like, no, don't bother, don't bother, Garibaldi. And it's exactly what they set up early in the episode. We just see a coin on a table, and then we see her staring at it. It's like, oh, it's going to move. It's going to move. So that's super
Yeah, it
interesting.
moves fairly quickly, and I think I like her reaction to it though. Like she's worried about it. Like
Mm.
this is a gift, but it's also going to be a huge burden for her, and she can tell.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that I also liked that he brought up when he was giving his whole mythology kind of rant. I mean, it's technically just a rant of exposition, but it was so interesting. The exposition I never minded because I was like, I
Yeah.
want all these details. But he talks about imagine an assassin who could just pinch like an artery, and there'd be no evidence that anyone ever killed someone. It would just be they
Yeah.
would just die. And I'm like, damn, yeah. What I like about this is that even the idea that he goes to Talia after she's been scanned by the Psychops, because he knew she was going to be scanned, so he had to wait until that had been done first. It felt like, okay, like the character predicted that was going to happen, so it made it all feel just a little bit more real.
Hmm.
It didn't just feel like they were making things up as they're going along. So I appreciate that. I think. Uh,
I agree. I like a lot of the mythology and the lore that's being built up with this. I mean, that's what every one of these early episodes have been so far. It's just we're going to center around this culture or this type of person, and you're going to get their episode and learn more of their history. And this is an important one too because we don't have telepaths right now in
yeah,
our
this
world.
is a cool thing where, as much as I try to compare the political side of it to something, there is no
Hmm.
comparison for this. Like, I mean, I suppose the idea that there's experimental like stuff going on. I mean, it's maybe the closest is to like just building nukes or something like that and bigger bombs or
Well, it's also just having an advantage over other people,
yeah,
you know, that
yeah.
kind of a thing. Maybe you could make a, comparison to just having some sort of Big Brother technology.
Actually, yeah, honestly, in the modern world, the closest thing you can compare this to is probably cyber, like warfare and cybersecurity and
Mhm.
things like that. Maybe that's the direct comparison here.
I mean,
Uh,
they sort of bring it up in this episode too. Jason does, where he's talking about like, have the desire to make a better telepath comes from the fact that, since everybody has one now,
mm,
it's just about who can have the better one because that's your ultimate weapon.
which is just driving them further and further and more
Mhm.
desperate and yeah, more extreme. And I love how this kind of enriches things from past episodes because I immediately thought of Jakar trying to bag a telepath for the Narn because they don't have one, and how maybe inadequate that makes them feel versus everyone else. Uh,
Yes.
that's really interesting. So I like that all this stuff we learn kind of reinforms not only past episodes, but just like okay, so now I think of the Narn and what they're like and what Jakar's like with the and how he represents his people, and I think about the fact that this arms race that we've just found out about and we're talking about, and like he's not even in that race. That his people are in that race. So how does that make them feel? It enriches another part of the mythology,
Mhm.
just by like a knock-on effect, which I really appreciate. So yeah,
And we get Chekhov, and he's
we get
dressed
check.
like a supervillain.
Oh yeah, I actually see that the badges on their things. I legitimately thought they were a Hydra badge at one point because it just like obviously
Yeah.
these episodes are on SD. Like I'm watching on a 70-inch TV. It does not look good, from a quality perspective. And I gave up at some point of hoping. And one day if they do a HD remaster, just so you can watch it and it'll look kind of nice, that'll be great. But I've accepted that the first watch is going to be in the original, no nonsense Amiga
Right.
effects with SD video. And there's a charm to that, I suppose. Um,
Definitely.
but no, if actually my biggest complaint of the episode actually is I think his partner was a bit of a iffy actress.
She reminded me so much of the sister Romulan from the Picard series.
Oh yeah.
She had that same sort of swagger about her, like, "I'm gonna be sexy evil."
Yeah, but at least this one get killed off in one episode and not we didn't have to
Mhm.
put up with her all season.
Yeah.
And she does get disintegrated because that's one of the things that Ironheart says is that he's basically at the point now where he can just disintegrate a person. In fact, Joey's
Yeah.
kind of become that. I'm thinking about it. He's basically Doctor Manhattan.
That's what I was
Uh,
definitely getting Major
yeah,
Manhattan vibes. I
yeah,
mean, he's nude at the end too.
it's true. Well, I mean, when you're a being of light, I mean, you don't really need clothes out.
You don't need clothes.
You're kind of done at that
Luckily,
point.
there was some very, tastefully placed nebula around him, so space
Look,
dust.
look, Garibaldi is already feeling insecure that he has to live up to this god. We don't have to also see the Wang as well, just to, drive it all home. All right, it's for Garibaldi's sake, not ours. Garibaldi is a study in the fragile male ego, and I'm calling it
He's got no chance.
that. It's all right. Delen's wanting to watch cartoons with him. She's making an effort.
I know. What a sweetheart. We haven't seen her, have we? It's been a little bit.
Well, she was in the last episode. It's not
Yep,
this
it
one.
wasn't like centered around her.
True, true. There was no Londo this episode either. Um,
You're right.
I know, right? But but surprisingly, episode is really, really good despite that fact. Because honestly, the partner Cyclops, my main complaint. I did love when they first show up how they weren't even speaking. We just had like the guy at the
Yeah.
terminal just being like, "Yes,
I was
sir,"
thinking,
right away.
no wonder Walter Koenig took this role. He doesn't have to say anything. Just shows up, wears black gloves, and looks sinister.
And even just something simple as Sinclair like not realizing that it wasn't out loud at first, and then when he looks up and sees and realizes he's really offended and says, "Get out of my head," which I think is kind of interesting, or makes sense because he's
He's really
missing.
offended by it. Like, you're supposed to ask.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking specifically that he lost 24 hours and he feels like something he didn't know about, something fishy went on in that time, and he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I think the idea that someone's poking around in his head is especially like disturbing to him because he thinks that's something like that happened and he didn't know about it.
Mhm.
Or at the very least, even if he doesn't have those suspicions, I think how he reacts to this will feed into like when we learn more about like stuff going on he doesn't know about. Whatever Delen's plan is for him, this idea of deceit and all the rest. Like I don't know, like it's a little character detail.
Definitely. I think the one criticism I really have about this episode is, I mean, the way Talia talks about her relationship with Jason is so like intense and passionate, but whenever
Hmm.
they have scenes together, it's very cold. Like, it doesn't really come off as they had this intense relationship before.
Oh, I can see.
And
Yeah, I can see that.
even her reactions to the end where he's like ascending into this godlike being, she's just like, "Oh, Jason." I don't know, like her. I actually think she's really good in lots of the other scenes, but in the ones with him, like maybe there's just no chemistry or something.
I think yeah. I think there's no romantic. I think I like her in the episode. I like him. He does get a little bit hammy in a couple of his bigger speeches. Like see when he's
Mhm.
giving his speech to Sinclair about what he could do and all that. He is maybe going a little bit over the top with it, but not so much that I was pulled out of it. But maybe the complaint that I would agree with is it doesn't really feel like there's much sexual chemistry between them. It doesn't feel like
Yeah,
he's
between what she's describing is what they
yeah.
had, and seeing them together, like I just don't. I don't see it. Like they're not giving me anything to work with here. But I like the scenes with her and the Psy Corps and like her reactions to them, because I know she was like raised in the Psy Corps, so like she really sees them as like disciplinary parent types, and
Oh
she has
yeah.
that fear when she's getting in trouble.
Or even just that
And
idea that she was devoted to them to the point where she was willing to like argue, or I mean not argue, but like defend them to Ivanova before, and now
right.
here she's found out from Ironheart what like they're up to something kind of nefarious, and maybe her faith in the Psychor has been shaken in some level. But I'm curious to see how that plays out. I think that's probably a thread we're going to be playing with. Is how she.
Yeah, and now she knows that, and now she's going to be a huge commodity because of what he's given her as a gift.
In fact, just on
And
that little
that's something to fear.
that little detail about Ivanova is like at one point when they're confronting these Cyclops, Like, she doesn't get much, but there's just a little moment where she goes, "Oh, just like the Psychor," and she kind of like goes on just a little bit of a rant, and I was like,
Mhm.
I love this. I love that like they're not wasting the opportunity to have her react to these characters because we know how she feels about them. So it feels in character, but it also reinforces what we learned before. And it's been a few episodes, so it's a nice way of reminding us, okay, this is how she feels about Psychor, and it clicks in your head. Oh, and now I remember the story about her mother. I remember why she feels
Right.
this way, and it's making all these things, making sure they're all bubbling, and they're not going too long without giving us something to remind us that that's going on. So,
Is that something that gets passed on like through? Is it like random? Is it like a Jedi thing? Like just random on who gets to be a telepath?
I would say it seems random because it doesn't. Ivanov has never said anything where like she had to be watched closely in case she developed anything. It seems to be, yeah, it just seems to be random.
And it's like it's from birth too. Like it's not something that you develop later. Like is Ivanova going to become a telepath because her mother was?
No, it wasn't from birth because when she talked about her mother didn't realize, or like it didn't trigger in her until she was like in her 30s or something like that, maybe even her
Oh,
40s.
okay. Well, maybe then
I mean, it could, yeah. I mean, it could just sort of like one day she just wakes up and is like,
she becomes
I hear
that what she
something.
hates.
Well, she doesn't hate telepaths. She hates Psychor. I guess
That's true.
that's, yeah. Because I think that's the distinct. I think she's hates them for what they do to telepaths who don't want to play by their rules. So
Mm. Maybe they'll play it like my mother died of this disease and I'm likely to get it because she did when I hit a certain age or something.
yes, it's yes. As far as I
Right.
know, it's not hereditary, but uh, maybe she's more likely to get it. I don't know. Like maybe that's something they'll bring up at some point. Um, for
I
all
mean,
we,
I mean, it's not necessary. I just
oh sure,
was
yeah,
curious since they brought it up.
yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it seems like a somewhat obvious road to take if they wanted to, like, because she hates them so much that she becomes one. But like you said, it is she hates the Psychor, not and well, she does kind of hate Talia and what she represents.
it's because Talia works for Psycho though, so I think I think she might like Talia a bit more now that Talia is going to be a little more, you know,
Anti-Psycho.
yeah, critical of like how they might be operating. So maybe they'll actually end up bonding over time. I could see that. I could see that. The subplot in this I actually really love as well. And would you have believed we got a Catherine subplot to herself basically in the very next
Yeah.
episode? Uh, but she basically makes this deal. She has a scene with Sinclair earlier on where they're just kind of like saying goodbye. She's got this meeting to go to, um, and she's meeting with this guy. Tally is there to broker the deal as we set up way back in like episode 1 or 2, and it's like, okay, so it's a sector of space, it's whatever. She agrees to the deal. It's top secret. She can't tell Sinclair about it. So just this idea that her relationship with the commander of Babylon 5 is public, and people know that and don't want that to be a factor in her dealings. But there's a nice little ending to it where the guy's like, oh, and one more thing, it's kind of a contested area of space, so it has to be approved by a third party. And you can just see him walking behind her, and he looks up, and Jakar's just got this grin in his face. I loved it. It was the entrance. Well, I think my favorite thing
He
about,
loves all the little bits of power he gets.
oh, he does. In fact, one of the little things in this that I really loved was when she does a little like bad impression of him when she's like
Mhm.
out in space and she's like, "Oh, that sector's too dangerous," and she puts on like a little accent. I was like, "Yes, I want more of these characters to do impressions of Jakar and Londo. That's my goal in life now." But
Yeah.
basically, he says no, you can't go, and he won't really say why. He gives her a speech about people not being what they seem, but she goes anyway. And we see him make a call to the home world saying, "Hey, I need like some space, fighters. Make sure they're fully armed." And anyway, it plays like a sinister cliffhanger. Where like, oh, is he going to go and try and kill her? Is he going to like get some ships to shoot her down?
Well, he gives her some. It sounds like a threat. Like
Mm.
she's like, "Well, what if I go anyway?" And he's like, "Well, it's too bad Commander Sinclair won't get his girlfriend back or something like that."
Yeah, well, because he makes it very clear that people who go out there tend not to come back, and it is kind of it sounds like a threat at the time, but given the context of what we see, it's like no, he's being genuine. A lot of people go out there and just don't come back.
It's dangerous.
And yeah, when she's out there, like, I mean, it's hard to describe this thing. I think the first time I saw this, I described it as like a giant, like neon jellyfish going through space.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking of like the Encounter at Farpoint Star Trek pilot
Hmm, a little bit,
with those things,
a
those
little bit.
jellyfish-like things. Yeah.
It's
But it's
giant.
probably bigger and faster.
Yeah, giant other world. It breaks down her ship. Her ship won't function after this, so she's basically stranded. And it's this otherworldly thing, and this ties neatly because if you think of the main plot of the episode, which is Ironheart becomes this new being. She's stranded, but then a couple of ships show up, and it turns out no, Jakar was actually doing a good thing. He was sending out ships to save her, and to
Yeah.
escort her back to the station. And it's there's not too much to this plot, but I love this speech. But my favorite scene of the episode is by far the speech at the end that Jakar gives to Catherine, where the first half of this scene is basically just her saying like, "Why did you try and help me? I'm surprised. You're kind of a dick." I mean, she didn't say it in those words, but that's what she's saying. And
Right.
he's like, "Well, like I had no reason not to. Like, you dying would really upset Sinclair, and that would make my life more difficult. So I have no strategic reason to want you to die. So why not?" And it maybe paints this idea that Jakar is a complete dick when he's got something to gain, but if he doesn't
Yeah.
have something to gain, he actually might make a friendly choice, I guess.
He's not a total monster.
He's got layers, is what we're
Behind
saying.
those blood red eyes is a heart of gold. Maybe many hearts. I don't know how many they have.
He's got layers. He's got layers. He's saying that there's more to him than what seems. There's even more to as he puts it, Malari, because he never says Londo. He always says Malari,
Mhm.
and I love the way he says it. But then she's like, "Hey, I saw something out there, Ambassador. What was it?" And he goes into this thing about how he picks up an ant from the flowers and how they kind of get to the station because they ship things from Earth and the ants just kind of end up there. And he talks about, well, if I put this ant down and the ant says to another ant, "Hey, what did you see? How would he describe me?" But the phrasing I love here is when he says, "There's things out there that to us we're just to them we're just ants, and we'd have no way of communicating with them. And there's sectors of space that are unexplored, and these beings that are billions of years older than my race or your race." And the phrase that he says here that I love is, I am equally terrified and I forget the other word he used. I'm equally terrified and uh, awestruck. That wasn't awestruck, but see, I love the phrase so much
Something
that I
like that,
forgot it.
sure.
Yeah, I'm equally terrified and like filled with wonderment that there are areas of space that we don't understand yet. And it was a really, I think it showed a different side to Jakar, which is it's really unique because the last episode also gave us this other side of Jakar because we followed his plot instead of other people. So he wasn't the villain last episode. So this is two
Right.
episodes in a
Yeah,
row.
it's hard not to like Shakar after these first few episodes, huh?
Yeah, these last two episodes have done a good job of giving us different sides to him. Where I don't just think he's the villain
Oh, he
anymore.
says, I'm both terrified and reassured to
Yeah,
know that there are still
yeah.
wonders in the universe.
I love that phrase. I'm both
Mhm.
terrified and reassured that there's still wonders out there that we don't understand. I just there's something so poetic about it, and maybe it works because Jakar is so Shakespearean all the time anyway, because the way he rambles on. But
And I mean, he seems like somebody who's super confident about being in space and surviving wars and all that. And
oh yeah,
like, it's hard not to think of humans as still a little bit new at this. And like these guys are, they've been around longer maybe in space. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I think it's true.
they have the ego and confidence of like people who have are a race that has been in space longer than us.
Yeah, because he even says they've tried to communicate with these
Mm.
beings. It's Sigma 957 or whatever the sector was. I can't remember if that was the number, but um, I mean, obviously from a mythology point of view, it's really exciting to have this element introduced. But I think it's an interesting extra layer to the themes of the show that there is these like more not supernatural but more like greater big idea science fiction concepts on top of the otherwise very grounded politics that it plays with amongst the alien races. And like him talking about this and being humbled by it almost, and realizing that he's not the biggest baddest thing in the universe and that there is more to it than just their own petty bickering. It's kind
Yeah.
of interesting. I'm reminded of Carl Sagan's speech, the pale blue dot, right?
Right. That's what it's meant to invoke, right? It's that it's hard not to look at the universe, and when the more you study of it, the smaller you feel. Like it's just so much. It's so like how like it really does make you feel insignificant when you really think about how much is out there. But um and even though this is like, look, we've made it. We've conquered space. It's like, nope, even out there we're still just ants in someone else's universe.
Yeah, I love the sentiment. I think it's, it ties so neatly into like everything the show's doing and its main plots that there is this extra element, and the fact that Jakar's the one giving us this message is so
Mhm.
interesting. Like, would Londo share some of these sentiments? I'd love to. No, I'd love to see a scene where Londo talks about beings if he even knows they exist. Is this something that he is aware of? I'd be fascinated by that
Mm.
because it's just a selection, and I love that like a slow version of the main theme plays as well at the end of this speech. It gives it this kind of like, I don't know, just stop and wonder. Like, it's that feeling of looking up to the stars and just wondering. The idea that even though they're in space, even though they're on space stations, there's still that feeling of there's still so much out there that we can't even possibly understand or even begin to interpret. Uh, we have. I think that's what ties in so nicely to the main plot of Ironheart saying that we're not ready for this before he ascends to be this new thing. Is that, yeah, human
Mhm.
beings aren't ready. We are in the dark ages as far as this side of the world or the universe is concerned. So that was beautiful. I love that last little speech.
Yeah. Pretty good episode. I'm excited about what the future with Walter Koenig and the Psi Corps will hold.
He did say he'd be
Um,
back.
I like the character of Talia a lot, and I think now that she has something, she's dealing with that's bigger than what she's expected. Like that'll be interesting to see how she deals with that and what that means for her. And yeah,
Yes.
and Jakar has some couple great speeches in it, so
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. Chekhov's name is Bester, by the way. We should probably know that because he does come back. I just double check just to be sure.
Hmm.
So no, I like the
He
stuff.
comes back this season, doesn't he?
I don't know. Maybe it does.
Oh, maybe that. I thought maybe he did, but
I don't know if it does. It may. So yeah, I was actually never mentioned how they deal with him. He's kind of left behind after his partner gets vaporized, and they just basically threaten to tell him. They'll
to
tell
frame
everyone.
him for the
Yeah,
for the for his missing assistant.
yeah. There wasn't actually much to it, but there was a moment where before Sinclair gets to meet Ironheart, where Ironheart's literally created like a sort of like bubble at part of the station that no one can enter into. It was a fun set piece, but it didn't actually really amount to anything. I thought it was going to be more of like that's how do we get into the bubble sort of thing, but it just, you know, it's not really about
Goes
that.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he lets Sinclair in because he wants to talk to him. So there you go. That is that. But yeah, no, I thought Main Wars was really good episode. Obviously a couple of cheesy speeches, maybe a guest star that's not great, and the partner, but that's about it. I thought the subplot was beautiful. So, by all means, let us know what you thought of this episode in the
Mhm.
comments. Of course, hit the like button. Liking is super important because it does, help us out on YouTube, and YouTube will recommend us out more and things like that. If I could speak, Tara, do the Patreon bit while I lubricate.
If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildfuzzTV. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of other shows we do, including the ACE, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, that is our science fiction movie review show. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to these Babylon 5 reviews 1 week early. So please check that out and watch Babylon 5 with us a week earlier than everyone else. Thank you.
There you go. I also catch us on Twitter at @mild_fuzz for channel updates. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Babylon 5. Just don't give away the home world.